Hi, Stitchers. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, where we share conversations about Palestinian embroidery. I'm Amani here with my co-host Lena, chatting with talented embroiderers and artists, sharing their stories, inspirations, and the cultural significance behind their work.
On today's episode, we are chatting with Zeina, a jewelry designer and founder of Ashira Jewelry, dedicated to celebrating, preserving, and raising awareness of Palestinian Tatreez through handmade beaded jewelry. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, Zeina.
Salam, I'm so excited to be here with you.
We
You're
are
actually
excited to have you.
you're the first jeweler to have to be on the podcast. So very
Oh, I'm so
exciting.
excited. I'm really looking
Yes.
to see where this conversation is going to take us.
Yes, and we'll definitely talk about your jewelry line as we kind of continue on the episode. But I will tell people, like, definitely check out Zaina's stuff. I first stumbled upon you through your jewelry line. Like, God, I don't know. It's been like over a year now. I think I like originally stumbled on your work, and I was like, this is so beautiful and so fun too. So I'm excited to chat a little bit about your jewelry. But before we dive into that, we always like to kick off the episode by letting our listeners know a little bit more about you. So could you start by sharing a little bit about you and your family's connection to Palestine?
Of course. So I'm half Palestinian, like Lena, from my mother. My mom is from Ramleh. So Amani, I think you're from Ramleh as well, right? Hey, neighbor.
Yes, we might be cousins.
Yeah, so my mom is from Ramleh. My dad's Iraqi, although I think he's been so pro-Palestinian and he's so well intertwined with the culture, you'd think he's Palestinian himself. And me being raised mostly by my mom and my mom's family in Jordan, you could say that I can relate more to my Palestinian side to my Iraqi side. In terms of history, my family, like I said, were in Ramleh and they were ethnically cleansed and forced to leave Ramleh in July 1948. It's actually, if you Google it, it's known as the Lidda and Ramleh Death March that was overseen by Rabin himself. So my mother was 3 years old at the time, and they had to walk for a few days to reach Ramallah. Now, my grandfather at the time was the branch manager at one of the Arab banks. So, for a period of time, for about 20 years, they were moving a lot. So, from Ramallah, they went to Gaza for a bit, and then they settled in Nablus. And then during the 1967 war, again, they had to leave and they settled in Amman, Jordan. So, that's where I was born. I was born in Amman. And my grandmother and mother never really returned. They never wanted to return as long as it was occupied. I never had the opportunity to visit, unfortunately.
Well, it's not too late. Inshallah, you'll be able to return. And inshallah, we all return to, an unoccupied Palestine.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you are not currently in Jordan now, right?
No, I moved to London 7 years ago. It started as a job opportunity. So I moved there, had a proper burnout, left my job, completed my second master's degree, started working, and then now I started my jewelry business a couple of years ago. So I'm a bit of a jack of all trades where I have a part-time job, I do my jewelry line, and I do a bit of consulting here and there. So yeah, that's where I am at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, we should chat
Stay
afterwards.
busy.
Yeah, because I'm curious to hear how you're juggling it all because I'm in that limbo. I quit my job. Quit my full-time job in March and still figuring out the things.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, I get that. I've also done the same as well. It was this year, well, a year and a half ago, so not much ahead of you yet.
Well, we'll figure it out together. We'll figure it out. But before we jump into your jewelry business, I obviously want to hear about your Tatreez journey. It is Tatreez inspired, but before we get to that, how did you learn Tatreez? How did that journey begin?
So my mother and my mom's cousin are very much into tatreez. They're very serious about it. They're very dedicated about it. And so my grandmother and mother made sure that their daughters, myself, my sister, our first cousins, we all learned how to do tatreez ever since we were 6 or 7 years old. We would start with little projects like coasters, and then we'd work on bigger things like maybe pillowcases or runners or wall hangings. And my grandmother was very insistent about this. Like she would say, like every year, once we graduated, she would make this big wall hanging for us, and she would threaten us, and she would say, if you stop doing tatreez, I'm not going to gift you this wall hanging. So we had to show her all the time the projects that we were working on.
I need to talk to her too, because I aspire to be that woman in my family.
God, yes. I mean, I should honestly show you some of her work. It's breathtaking. She would, at the end of her life, she started, instead of gifting people things that she would buy, it would all handmade gifts, you know? So like either Quran covers or coasters or something for the little babies. So yeah, I mean, Tatreez has always been there with me since I was a child. I mean, it was, I think, one way of my grandmother and my mother instilling this connection with a homeland that we have never seen or been to before. So that was one way for them to instill that passion for Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a gift to be able to learn at such a young age, especially living in diaspora, and to learn from your grandmother too. I'm curious, like, what are some of what are some of the things that your grandmother instilled in you when it came to Tatreez, whether it was kind of like the mindset or even like rules that she gave you guys around Tatreez?
Oh my God, she was such a perfectionist. Sorry, Tata. Perfectionist free.
Love her.
You know, she had to, she taught us that every stitch she had to, you know, like how one stitch had to be over another, that all of that had to be uniform. She would look at the back and make sure, you know, that the back wasn't messy, and all that. And for me as a kid, it's like, khalas, just let me work on my work, you know, let's focus on, you know, what's important is the output, not the process. But but she really did instill that in us. And to this day, whenever I do cross stitch, I still, despite the fact that, you know, it's no longer for me just about the output, it's also about the process and making sure that the front and the back are very well presented and done properly. I think you can relate to that a lot, Amani.
Yes, I'm like, oh, your Hajja, God, she is right there with me. That woman right here. We're on the same page. I love it.
Maybe it's a
And
Ramleh.
so it was, maybe it is. I think, you know what? Ramle women are a little crazy in the best way possible. Um, and so it was like kind of a family affair, it seems like that is being as a family. Is that something that you guys are still like, do you guys still do that as a family? I know obviously now you live in London, so you might not be as close physically with everyone, but is that something that you guys are still able to do when you're together?
Ever since my grandmother's passing, sadly, that's not the case. I mean,
Mm.
whenever we could, I mean, actually, now that you mention it, my nephew recently got married actually on Christmas Day, and the day before, my mother was teaching his wife how to do tatreez. So she's from Al Khalil, and
Oh,
she never did
uh-huh.
tatreez, and so my mother was teaching her how to do it. So, and she
That's
bought
so
her all the
sweet.
items and all the pieces so that they can go, when they go back to the States, that she can do it. But apart from that, I think all the things that it was really my grandmother who was the one who unified us towards Tatreez.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear that. I think that's so cute though, that your mom taught your cousin's wife how to tatreez. Also, Khalili tatreez is so I love like
It's
Khalili
beautiful.
designs and motifs.
Yeah.
Like Khalili and Ghazawi like designs are like probably my two favorites. So okay, let's get into your jewelry line because it is inspired by tatreez. Can you start by kind of just like, well, I guess first, because we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, can you talk to us about the name of your brand and the meaning behind it?
Sure. So I was looking for a name for my jewelry. And like you said, Amani, it was also based a lot, it is based on Tatreez. And my mission for starting this whole business is because I wanted to showcase our beautiful folk art and I wanted to increase awareness about it. Not many people were aware of Palestinian cross stitch. And I also wanted a way to document it and to preserve it. So when I was trying to find a name, I was like reading about the history of Tatreez and I was seeing how, some people say it was going back to thousands of years, possibly during to Canaanite times. They were also saying how female dominated it is, and that is done by mostly women. And so I was trying to find something that would connect all of this. And then I came across the name Ashira, and I found out that Ashira used to be the mother goddess during the Canaan period, and she's a Canaan goddess. And then I thought, well, it has a nice ring to it. She's the mother goddess. So girl power right there. Then you have, going back to Canaan period. So I thought it was a great way to encompass everything about Tatreez and my jewelry line as well. So that's why I decided on the name.
Amazing.
And so how did this whole thing start though? Where did you get inspired to begin the business?
It started during a very bad period in my life 2 years ago. I was having visa problems in London. I didn't even know at the time whether I was going to move back to Jordan or not within a month. It was a very bad period in my life. And whenever I'm going through like a traumatic period in my life, I have to do something with my hands. I can't just sit still. I need to do something. I need to take my mind away from whatever is that's causing the trauma. And so I decided to settle on bead looming because it caught my eye. I've done knitting before, wasn't great at that. Tried other forms of I tried Islamic art, wasn't that great at that. But then I saw that the bead looming was perfect. It was relatively straightforward for me, and so I started doing it. And whenever I would go on YouTube and they would be discussing, like how to make the design, what colors to use, and then they were talking about, what styles to use, like what it was French deco or whatever, and it didn't really resonate with me. I mean, with all due respect, the French deco, it just, I can't relate to it. And I've always liked jewelry that I can relate to. And then while I was looking at the loom, I realized that the underlying grid is very similar or exactly the same as Tatreez. And I'm like, actually, why don't I try to use Palestinian cross stitch patterns on the bracelets that I make and see how it goes? And so I had a couple of books here with me in London, and so I started going through them. I chose a couple of patterns, and voila, that's how it started. I showed my mother what I was working on, and she absolutely loved it. And then I started experimenting with more and more patterns. And then I started, when I was doing Tatreez, when my grandmother taught me Tatreez, I never really delved into the names of the patterns, where they come from, their origins. Whereas with this, it became another learning opportunity for me to start getting to know Tatreez in a more rooted way, because I started seeing, gosh, these patterns have names, these patterns have meanings, they have a history, there's an origin to them. And so that's why I got even more into it. And that's how I developed this healthy obsession.
I love that you call that a
We can
healthy
relate.
obsession. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Amazing.
it is. Alhamdulillah, it is a healthy obsession. It is going somewhere. Yeah. Thank God it's not
No,
something.
no, totally, totally. Okay, so you started playing around in your free time for yourself, and then when did you decide to make this a business and start sharing it with the rest of the world?
It was in Amman when I was trying to show my pieces to a jeweler in Amman, and he was the one who gave me like this tough talk. And he's like, Zaina, this is either going to be a business or very expensive hobby. You need to choose.
Mm.
Sorry. So that's when I said, okay, you know what? Um, I've had I'm almost 40, so my midlife crisis kind of hit early for me. And I'm like, I don't want to live all my life and only start living and doing what I love when I retire. I want to start doing it earlier than that. So let me just go ahead and start this business. I'll learn a lot. I'll give myself 2 to 3 years. We'll see how things are going. If it doesn't work, I'll just go back to a full-time job and that's it. But I mean, let me try and just put my heart and mind and effort into this and see where it goes. Because it's either now or never. I'm not going to wait until I'm 65 to do this.
Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, you are
Totally.
in good company. Amani and I are big fans of this approach and mindset. I love
Yes.
it. And I'm so happy that you took the plunge. Well, so how is it going? Because from where I'm sitting, you're doing awesome. I love the content that you're putting out there. I love the jewelry that you're creating, and you're able to kind of give a little piece of Palestine to your customers. How's it going? How's the reception been? Who are the types of people who are interested? What kinds of conversations does it open up? Like, tell us all the things about how it's going.
It's honestly, it's been such a learning experience. I think this period, then I started my business, I think I've grew personally. My character has grown so much during this 1.5 years of me doing this than having a corporate job for 10 years. Because when you have a corporate job, there's one thing that you're supposed to do, and that's it. Whereas with this, you wear so many hats. You have to be the accountant, you have to be the marketer, you have to be the sales, you have to be the wholesaler, you have to be everything. And so it's been a fantastic journey so far. And it's also, I'm quite the introvert. I'm the type of person who, if I see you across the street, if I see you in front of me, I'm going to cross the street to avoid you. Whereas when I have to, now that I have my business, I can't do that. I have to sit and talk to people, especially in
Yeah.
markets. I can't, if someone approaches me, I can't just go and hide under the table. I need to sit and talk to people. And I realized, you know what, it's not that bad. I can survive this and actually I can enjoy it. And so I think I could say with markets have been the best experience for me, because with a lot of times, when I'm in London, I think this is something that you said, Amani, before. You're aggressively Palestinian. I became
Yes.
aggressively Palestinian when I moved to London. Yes, when I moved to London. So whenever I have markets, I purposely show them that this is a Palestinian stall. It's either I have the flag
Mhm.
or I'm wearing the kufiya. So and a lot of people are curious. They come and they talk, and I describe to them, I'm telling them about the reason why I started this business. And then I start discussing, telling them about the bracelets, where they're from, the history of the village or the history of the city, the history of the pattern, its meaning. A lot of times, it was so emotional for people that they started crying. And even though that was never
Wow.
my intention,
Yeah.
but it seems like for a lot of people, it's both educational and emotionally stirring for them. And
Mhm.
so I think whenever I'm having a hard time with my business, I mean, it's a small business after all. Sometimes you're not doing very well. Sometimes it's fantastic. Like Christmas was fantastic. Other times it's not going so well. It's those encounters that are the ones that want to make me continue what I'm doing, because I know that I'm not just creating jewelry for the sake of creating jewelry. And especially since October 7 and the uprising of October 7 and the genocide that ensued, I think it's been very important for me to put Palestine as the center of the conversation. And
Mhm.
that's what I do whenever I do have markets, is that I try to tell people and center the conversation about Palestine and what's happening there. So
Yeah.
that's markets have been good. In terms of what next steps for me are, is that I want to start and try to infiltrate markets and shops in London. So in about 2 weeks, I'm taking a part of something called Top Drawer, and it's business to business exhibition. And that's the time where I'm going to start talking to businesses, see if I can have my pieces stocked at their shops. Because I think it's after a year and a half of doing business to customer, now I want to try business to business and see how that goes.
Totally. And what you were talking about, as far as like, people when you're explaining to them the meaning behind your designs and their emotions, we often talk about, I think Lena and I also talk about with people the fact that like Tatreez and art in general, it's this way, especially for non-Palestinians, it's a non-intimidating way for them to begin to understand Palestine and Palestinians. So I'm not surprised that people have that reaction, but I'm also glad to hear that like they have that reaction, that they're like moved by it. Um, how are how are Palestinians versus non-Palestinians responding to your work?
With Palestinians, I don't have to explain it. You can just see it in their eyes, you know? They look at it, and sometimes a lot of people will come and they're like, is this Tatreez? They look at the patterns and they're like, we saw the patterns, we recognize this is Tatreez. Is this Tatreez? I'm like, yes. So, you can see the spark in their eye. You don't have to explain anything. Whereas with non-Palestinians, I kind of have to dig deeper. I have to explain what Tatreez is. Why is it significant? And that's how that's how I make them connect to it, that I have to use more the emotional aspect rather than the logical aspect for them to understand and to create that connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, I'm curious too, this goes back to what you mentioned a little earlier, but obviously, like you grew up in Amman, now you're living in London. You practice Tatreez as far as stitching and you incorporate Tatreez into your jewelry work. I'm curious how, I guess it's a twofold question. The first part is, how is living in diaspora in the Arab world, like in Jordan, versus living in diaspora in the Western world, as you are in London? How has that changed your relationship to your Palestinian identity? And then the second part being like, since you started doing your Tatreez inspired jewelry, has that also changed your relationship with your Palestinian identity?
I love these questions. I think I would say in Amman, I recognized I was Palestinian, but it's like you're going with the flow, The majority of people around you are Palestinian. You're not really standing out of the crowd. Whatever you say isn't going to be misinterpreted. And so it's okay. Yeah, there was not, I didn't have to, I wasn't standing out. I wasn't less standing out like a sore thumb. When I moved to the UK, it's the opposite. So so I had to, moving to the UK, there was less sexism that I had to deal with and more racism. And in Jordan, it's more sexism, less racism, more sexism.
Yeah.
So I knew how to deal with the sexism part of things. The racism part for me was quite new. I've experienced racism in my job. It's part of the reason why I got burnout. At the time, I didn't understand it was racism because I didn't know what it is. But after realizing what it was, I became more aggressively Palestinian. That I think that's the Virgo in me speaking. I'm very, like if you tell me one thing, I'm gonna do the other, So if you're gonna tell me Palestine and Arabs are bad, I'm gonna be even more Arab and more Palestinian, So, so
I love that. As
and
a Virgo rising, I approve.
exactly. And especially like if you look at me, I don't present as Arab. Even people in Jordan think I'm I'm either French or German. I unfortunately was born in the wrong skin suit. I don't look it.
That's a very funny way to put it.
Yeah, so that even made me more adamant that I want to show everyone that I am Palestinian, and that's why I became more aggressively Palestinian. And with my big mouth, sometimes that would land me in hot water, but that's fine. That's completely fine. So that's my experience of living as a Palestinian in diaspora in Amman versus in London. So in Amman, again, there's not much. Everyone's Palestinian, mostly Palestinian.
Yeah.
It's not anger the Jordanian society. Half the Palestinian. Well, there's a big Palestinian population present in Jordan, so you don't really stick out where and you can voice your support for certain resistance factions. That's fine. In London, you cannot. So yeah, these are the differences that I faced. Now, in terms of my bead looming, I was also at the time when all this trauma that happened to me, I was also facing a big identity crisis as well. Because I've been spending 5 years in London, and once you move, it's like you become neither here nor there. So I don't feel exactly settled in London, but it's also now if I go back to Jordan, it's still very hard for me to fit in after what I've experienced in London. So I was neither here nor there. I'm in London. I don't feel like I'm welcomed in London. I don't feel like I'm from there. I go back to Jordan. Also, I have to be in my own bubble for me to feel home. So with that identity crisis, going back to Tatreez and going back to this my roots, the history, kind of made me take a deep breath, made me feel rooted, and gave me the identity that I was looking for. So I think that's what Tatreez really did offer me, that security, that sense of self-identity, being comfortable with my identity. So I hope those two that my answers answered your questions.
So good. So good. I mean, all of that resonates 100% with both of us. I know we're always, Amani and I are always curious to the, like the experience kind of growing up in diaspora in the Arab world versus the West, primarily because we haven't really experienced that ourselves. I spent time in the Gulf, but it's different. And for someone who doesn't like speak the language and, it's very different of an experience. But there's something about this being disconnected from Palestine and knowing that you're Palestinian. It doesn't matter if you end up in Amman, if you end up in London, if you end up in the US, like it causes this, I guess, rupture in your identity. And like time and time and time again, a guest after guest who comes onto this podcast, you hear the same thing. Tatreez is the thing that helps you kind of feel whole while everything else is, a mess in your mind or in your heart. And I think that's so powerful that Tatreez was able to do that for you, even if it's not necessarily through the traditional needle and thread, but through beading, which is so cool. I'm curious about a little bit about your practice with Tatreez now. Do you do any more stitching in particular now? How do you think about new designs in your beading? Just more from like a creative standpoint. What is your relationship with Tatreez now?
So given that this is a small business that I'm running by myself, unfortunately, I don't have time to go back to Tatreez because I gave up a 9 to 5 job for a 24/7 job. Uh,
We can understand that.
Yeah, I know.
I don't have like I don't know what a weekend is anymore. I don't have that. So I do miss it. I miss creating, like I recently moved to a new house and I'm looking at the empty walls. I mean, I've filled some of it with my grandmother's work, but it's not enough. It doesn't fill everything. And I'm thinking to myself, I catch myself talking to myself like, yes, a runner would work here. And then I'd have to jump back to reality. I was, Zeina, you don't have time for this. Let's be real. So unfortunately, at this given moment in my business, I can't go back to Tatreez. But who knows? If my business grows, if I start hiring artists to start helping me with this, I would love to go back to it because it does provide that serenity and also that reconnection with my grandmother who passed.
Yeah,
Allah
yeah.
yarhamha.
Allah yarhamha. Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking about this with a few fellow Palestinian entrepreneur friends who I've made, and their advice to me was, why don't you just carve out 1 hour a week? That's just for you. It's not for the business. It's not because it's hard when your business is also kind of a creative outlet. It is difficult to kind of find that time, but what if it's just 1 hour a week that you dedicate and it's a day that's usually slow, it's whatever, and it's just 1 hour and you don't like no distractions, no phone, no TV, nothing. Just you allow yourself to have that creative outlet. And even if that runner takes you like 3 years, it's fine, but you'll have made progress every hour that week.
I love that because, like you said, then we get swept away, and we have to be conscious about the breaks that we take. Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like one of the things that I reflect on in this past year in particular is how for me Taltrice has felt very liberating. Like it's gotten me away from my full-time job. It's my creative outlet, all these things. But I think it's also a way to kind of like maintain like no burnout, like to help sustain you. So instead of like burning out from this, hopefully you can look at it as a way to kind of just release that energy.
I'm gonna do that. Oh, I'm gonna thank you.
I love this stuff. This kind of stuff makes me so happy. So I love these conversations.
Oh, I can start actually thinking about the runner that I want to make, isn't it? Oh, yes,
See, there
yes.
you go.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. Now we're gonna be expecting updates on this runner. Okay,
Yes.
we're gonna hold you accountable.
You'll see the
You can
updates on
text
my
us
personal
pictures.
Instagram.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing. I manage 50 stitches.
Yeah, that's all it is. That's all, honestly, that's all it
50
is. That's all
stitches is
you
a
need.
lot.
And
Like,
it's a
yeah,
lot. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
So when it comes to like the jewelry making, I'm interested in understanding like what right now is your creative process is like from design to execution and completion.
So what I do is that I usually have two collection drops a year. I have my spring, summer, and I have my winter, fall and winter. And whenever I do these collection drops, I focus on a specific area. So I have like a Ramallah collection and a Sdoud collection, Khalil collection, and so on. And the reason why I want to do that is that I want to raise awareness for people about each of those areas. And it's also quite educational for me because I have to do a lot of research about the city or the village that I chose, try to understand their history, try to understand, the colors, the patterns that they use. So it's a learning lesson for me, but I also try to summarize it for my customers as well. So let's see. So I usually what I do is that I start with an area that I want to focus on or highlight. And let's say, do I need to, should I break the surprise? No, I already decided on the city that I want to do for my upcoming spring and summer collection. So I was doing a lot of research on that. I stole a couple of books from my mom on my recent visit to Jordan. I have some of my resources here. So I do the research at first, and then I start looking at the patterns that they have and whether these patterns have meanings. If there's a lovely meaning that I can incorporate into the pattern that I have. And what in terms of the colors, I try to do two main color themes. So my spring summer collection is the vibrant color ones. My fall winter collection is the toned down neutral colors. So that's how I go about it. So and that's how I decide on the colors. The colors come after I decide on which patterns that I want and which city that I want. It's usually a long process because I do come up with several patterns and I have to test and retest everything, because even the beads themselves, Amani, they have different finishes. So some are matted,
Mm,
some have a shine, some are transparent, some have they're different. So whatever you envision,
yeah.
the beats sometimes don't match what you envision. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
experimentation and seeing whether this works with my customers or not. The more I do this, the more I realize that my target base, they don't really love very strong colors like vibrant
Mm,
red or vibrant fuchsia. So that's the reason why some of even the vibrant colors that I have are a bit toned down, because that's the client
mhm.
base that I have. So
Yeah.
that's it in a nutshell. But yeah, I mean, should I tell you about one of my interesting patterns? Um,
Yes. Yes, you should.
this one, if you can see that one, this
Oh,
pattern is
yes.
called
We'll
amulets.
show pictures.
This one's called amulets, and it's from Al Khalil. Khalil
Mhm.
was my winter and fall collection, and I loved adding it because I didn't even know that we had amulets in our patterns. And apparently, when I was reading about it, the women would sew the amulets onto their dresses. They usually come in triangular format, and they would purposely make either mistakes or use different colors on their dresses so that the women won't be attracted to their dresses and cause unleash the evil eye. So I just
Yes.
love that. It's like, oh my God. And whenever I tell customers like, oh, this is meant to be an amulet, and they're like, oh, I need it. I need some protection. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't
Do
really.
you, so Jen, do you also put in a little bit of mistakes in those amulets?
I thought about it. I didn't know
Or are
that's
you too
my
Virgo? Because I'm Virgo too, and I understand.
Yeah.
Virgo and my grandmother. I think she would come and haunt me in my dreams if I make a mistake. So I mean, I've thought about it, Lena. I decided no, I can't live.
You're so funny. And I also, I'm just gonna tell you, your structure of like 2 launches a year, winter, fall, spring, like that is giving my Virgo brain so
Right?
much,
Yeah, seriously.
so much peace. I love it.
We
So much
approve. We
structure. I
approve.
love it.
I tell a lot of people that doing this loom is a way for me to unleash my OCD in a healthy way, that it's going into
Yes.
this.
So good. It's
Yes.
so good.
Oh my God. That's so funny because I always like, I always tell people like, we know I'm a little obsessive about my backs and neatness and all that stuff. But I also tell people, I'm like, but it brings me joy.
Yes,
Like the
Exactly.
craziness brings me joy. If it
yes,
doesn't bring you joy, then don't worry about it. Like do
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
makes you happy. But like, it makes me happy. And I think it's the same thing. It's like, it's my way to unleash my OCD-ness in a healthy way. Healthy with quotation marks.
it's better that than unleashing it on if you're living with your husband and he's not an OCD person, and or your cat. This is good.
Exactly, exactly. So okay, I know you don't have necessarily the time right now, although we seem to find a solution
Yeah.
for you to get your stitching in. Have you incorporated or thought about incorporating beaded work into like your traditional tatreez?
That's what my mom is doing. My mom is doing cross stitch on clothing. And
Mm-hmm.
once she started seeing me doing the beading and things like that, she started incorporating beadwork into her
To her
tatreez.
stitching.
And honestly, it looks so pretty. I should show you something. Unfortunately, I don't have any of her work. So she made this, but at the time
Mm-hmm.
she didn't do the whole beads, but she would fill
Yeah.
it up with beads and it would look so pretty because it would shimmer, like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, she's doing that. But see, I didn't say if, once I get back to Tatreez, I will start doing
Yes. Oh my God, yeah. I really want to learn so I can do that because I've seen other like different types of embroidery that incorporate beading and it's so beautiful. And then seeing your jewelry that's all beaded to three and spot, I'm like, oh, the combination of the
that.
two would be insane. Oh, all
Absolutely.
right, all right. I can't wait to see what you come up with.
Well, I'll keep you posted.
Okay, so what is kind of next for your Tatreez journey? I mean, we have some ideas floating around. We like maybe for your business, like what's kind of upcoming for spring, summer, without any spoilers, of course.
I'm so I'm taking 2 months off from doing markets so that I can hone in my jewelry making skills because I would like to introduce a different kind of. So I do make beaded earrings, but I want to start making hoops that incorporate Palestinian tatreez. But I don't
Mm,
have, I'm not a jeweler. I didn't even study that. Didn't study jewelry. It had nothing to do with that.
mhm.
I studied business and behavioral economics. So I need to learn and find ways where I can start making those beaded hoops so that I can incorporate tatreez into them and introduce them in my next collection, hopefully. That's why there are no markets. I need to use this period just to experiment and upskill as well.
Ooh, so good. And
Oh, that's
okay,
fun.
I know you do the markets, but do you sell internationally? Like, do you ship?
I do ship to the US and Canada. I used to ship to Europe, but thanks to Brexit, they introduced a certain law that makes it hard for small businesses to ship to Europe. So that's on pause. Unfortunately, yeah, it's on hold, unfortunately, until I find a way around those new regulations. But yes, I do ship to the US and Canada.
Amazing. Well, hopefully, I would love to see your work in some stores internationally too. Once you conquer the UK retail spaces, we got to get you over here to North America.
Oh, I'd love that. I'd love that. I'd love that. Yes, absolutely. I mean, right now, like you said, I'm trying to focus on the UK. Once I get over that hurdle, the US and Canada would be my next target.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're excited to see the next steps. I'm very excited about the hoops too, because I am definitely a hoop girl. So I will be on the lookout for those. So then we always like to ask people what is a major life lesson that you have gained from Tatreez?
I think plenty. I can't hone it down to one. So one of
Oh,
them
you
is
could share as many as you'd like.
I think one of them is mindfulness and being present, because
Mm,
it's such a repetitive movement. And
mhm.
I've noticed that as I become like as a child, I didn't do this, but more as an adult, I started to be able to sync, the breathing with the act of tatreezing. So, like there's a certain mindfulness and taking a breath
Yeah.
in and breath out. So that's lovely. I think Tatriz was also a form, I mean, now for me, it's a form of connection with my ancestors, with my grandmother, with my mother, with all the other people who cross stitch in my family. And I think it also, in a way, I mean, it's because of Tatriz that I'm doing what I'm doing right now, and why my character has developed so much over the years. So I think what the role that Tatriz has played in my life is multifaceted, and I'm so grateful.
Oh,
So
so good.
beautiful.
I love this. So beautiful and so true. All of those things
Yeah.
are so true. Thank you so much for joining us today, Zaina. We so appreciate your time. How can the people follow you and get in touch and, be in the know when these hoop earrings drop?
I think this is where my age is going to show. I hate social media. I don't understand TikTok. I don't understand the other one. What is it called? But I do have an Instagram page, and I noticed that if I need to, like, I need to choose one. I told myself I need to choose one, so I chose Instagram. So I do.
That's fair.
It's Ashira Jewelry UK, so you can follow me there. I also have my website, and that's where I basically will announce the hoop earrings. It's my Instagram and my website. I don't have any other social media outlet, thank God. Uh, and yeah, that's how you can reach me.
Amazing. And actually, for our
Amazing.
listeners, you actually post some really cool educational content on Instagram too. So you're doing okay.
It's taken me a while. It's taken me a while to start understanding how to use Instagram to my advantage. I'm not willing to learn about the other ones. خلاص, it's
That's fair. That's fair.
Totally
Honestly,
fair.
I also feel like Instagram is where most of the Tatreez community is. And it's, yeah, I love scrolling on TikTok, don't get me wrong, but I feel like when it comes to like finding community and connecting with people, Instagram, I feel like is a little better, especially for the Tatreez world. So yeah, I hear you on that, girl. I work, my background is in marketing, and like social media has always been a part of my job, and I can bust out social media strategy. I can tell you like all the things to do, but when it comes to me actually doing it, oof, I'm
It's a
horrible at.
lot of
Lena's
work.
actually Lena, you're really good at it. Like
Yeah, but
mashallah
it's
alaic, you're good
draining.
at
It's
it.
draining and it's
It
not
is.
sustainable. Yeah, it's
It
hard.
is. It's hard. It's hard, but
You've
you're doing
done a
amazing,
fantastic
Zaina.
job. Both of you are doing a fantastic job, Annie. Kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Habibi. Well, we love having you on. This was like such an amazing conversation. We love your work. We can't wait for people to continue to see the like next iteration of your work. And of course, we will share all the links that you mentioned so people can check out your stuff and follow you. And we'll have to chat again as you continue to develop and innovate on your line. And we have to see that table runner. We're gonna hold you accountable.
Oh, thank you. No pressure. Thank you.
That was such a lovely conversation with Zaina. I am so glad we finally got her on the podcast. She is a doll, and I really love the fact that she's been able to take the traditional practice of Tetris and innovate it into a different medium. It's something that I personally love. Like I've done it with photography, and I honestly am trying to learn to do it with more things. So anytime I see another Palestinian artist do that, whether it's digitizing or jewelry like she's doing, it's always really cool and interesting. And I think it also speaks to the fact that like, Tetris is this very powerful art form that can go much much further than just needle and thread, which I think we say that all the time, but it's nice to see it in practice in different ways.
Yeah, and I think for me, the thing that just keeps repeating itself over and over and over again is you can come as your whole entire self, regardless of whether
Mm,
it's felt conflicting in the past, or like it just doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't matter. Tatreez is kind of like that home that you can always rely on, and just be yourself,
Hmm.
no matter, and also no matter how you've kind of changed as well over your lifetime. So I just love that she explained it so beautifully, and how Tatreez has kind of shown up for her, and how it's made her, helped her connect to her grandmother, and it's just all the things are so beautiful.
Yeah. I also, I thought it was also interesting that she had mentioned the fact that even though she has been stitching Tetris since she was, what, 6 years old, I think she had mentioned, like doing the jewelry and doing Tetris inspired jewelry has actually like deepened her knowledge about
Mm,
Tetris,
yeah.
and kind of forced her to learn more. So, again, it's like the deeper you get into this practice, the deeper the obsession becomes, and the more knowledge you gain. Like, we always say this, like, you never have enough knowledge about Tatreez. You're never like a quote unquote master, because there's always things to learn. And also just the fact that like it is this tool for her, for non-Palestinians, specifically, to learn more about Palestine, which is always very, very important work to be doing.
100%, 100%. And I think also to the knowledge point as well, it's also helping all of us kind of learn more about Palestine, not just like the technical
Hmm.
pieces of Tatreez or the different like motifs and patterns. It's a lot more than that. We're learning about our people, and our
Yeah.
ancestors. And I think that's so powerful. So good. I love these conversations. All right. Well, listener, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Tatreez Talk. We want to hear about your Tatreez journeys. So please share your stories with us at tatreeztalk@gmail.com. And we might just have you on an upcoming episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite listening platform, and be sure to leave a 5-star review. You can follow me at Lina's Thob and Amani at Minamani, and of course, follow the podcast at Tatreez Talk. We will talk to you soon.